Several weeks ago, our speaker for today talked with me about being a speaker at Roseville Rotary while we were at a meeting of the Co-Roundtable. Co-Roundtable has a monthly meeting of what I would consider to be a group of well-educated, insightful, and knowledgeable people. The only reservation I have about this group is that they let me in.
How'd you get in?
Our speaker seems to have insights and is able to introduce examples of history that directly relate to whatever topic is under discussion. He is truly a person who prefers to learn from history rather than repeat mistakes that could be avoided by studying history. I know he has traveled a long and arduous path to earn his PhD, teach at multiple universities, and consult with organizations all around the world. Mostly I've learned that when he speaks, he has good ideas that are worth paying attention to. He recently published a book explaining the theory that basically we are all nothing more than the sum total of our experiences to date. When we recently discussed his talk to Roseville Rotary, I mentioned that theory, and in response, he said that he would rather talk about things that are more relevant to our current world. Now, I'm just interested in hearing what his current ideas are. So please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Michael Hartoonian.
Thank you. Last point, and that has to do with democracy and capitalism as basically an argument. The neat thing about America is that it's not based on religion, it's not based on monarchy, it's not based on anything. It's simply an idea that anybody can buy into, but you got to buy into it. And what is it that you buy into if you want to run a free market and if you want to live in a democracy? This is tough because even Aristotle called democracy a corrupt form of government. He called it corrupt because he said if the people find out that they can get whatever they want, you're going to have a revolution. The other thing that's interesting about our democracy, and if you go back to the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, Madison suggested quite clearly that if we were angels, he said if men were angels, we wouldn't need a government. But we're not angels, so what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to put checks and balances. We're going to make sure that one person, one man as they called it back then, one man's freedom is dictated by how that freedom affects other people. And when they drew up the Constitution, it was interesting. We the people, that's a small set. It was males over 21 who owned property. Very small set. Why? Why? Because the founders feared what they called the unwashed mob. And people, you know, and it's interesting, when Jefferson came back, he wasn't involved in the writing of the Constitution. He was upset. He said, because the values I put in the Declaration are not found in the Constitution. What's up with that? And he said, well, we have to keep people away from government. And his comment is really revealing. If you think the people are too indiscreet, i.e. stupid. The secret is not to take the power from them, but to enhance that indiscretion through instruction. Send them to school. But when he said send them to school, he had one particular thing in mind. You do not go to school to become better off. You go to school to become better, period. And somewhere along the line, we turned, as I said to the Senate, the Faculty Senate at Minnesota, we have turned the University of Minnesota into a glorified vocational school. And if you don't believe that, ask the students, and if you don't believe them, ask their parents. We don't know what an education is for. We have not read the charter of the Morrill Act that was signed in 1863 by Abe Lincoln. Land-grant universities have one major purpose, and that is to create citizens who can keep the republic going. That's it. Everything else is kind of frosting on the cake. And you say, well, what about all the jobs that are going unfilled and so forth? Yeah, where are the apprentices? Where are the internships? In fact, once a university suggests that they can turn out people to fill jobs in an economy for years hence, are they telling the truth? I don't think so. I think that's more of a hope. The beginning of wisdom is the ability to put first things first. And that's a tough thing to do. So if capitalism, and particularly democracy, by the way, capitalism, and we think of Adam Smith as the father of capitalism, and if you go through the book that he wrote before, An Inquiry into the Causes of the Wealth of Nations, he was dealing with the question, how is wealth created? I've asked hundreds and hundreds of people that question without a satisfactory answer. To be perfectly honest with you, most Americans don't know how to create wealth. They confuse it with money, they confuse it with status, they confuse it with a number of things, but it's not wealth. It's not the wealth that capitalism is based on. I'll just say this. Adam Smith said that if you expect a free market, it has to be shot through, I think he used the word encased. It has to be encased in ethics. If it is not, the market will soon become expensive, sluggish, and corrupt. 1776. And I think but the fact of the matter, a lot of people who call themselves capitalists have never read Adam Smith. And so they don't have the internal resilience to really face up to these notions. So, what's the argument about when we talk about democracy? Because it's just an idea, and it's sustained by argument. The argument is about our values that are in conflict or tension with one another. And this book, which is based on that research, it's called The Idea of America. Did it primarily for the Williamsburg Foundation, because a lot of the stuff in here goes back to our founding. I think the 18th century is a century we ought to build a better bridge to and understand what these people were talking about. But they need to be woke, because we the people, that's set back in the 1780s and 90s, has no place in this in this country didn't have it then, doesn't have it now, but it's dependent upon responsibility. It's dependent on people that know the difference between being a citizen and being a subject. And there is a difference. And I'd like to give you the attributes of what it means to be a citizen, but I won't now. These are the values that are in tension with one another and need to be argued, continually argued, with truth and with a base of knowledge that projects concern for relationships among us. The first value tension is freedom, which we all value, right? But that's in a tension with equality. When the slaves were freed, they had all the freedom in the world, right? But they didn't have any equality. What good is freedom without some equality? And what's interesting about these values, if you push them to the extreme of a continuum, the logical extension of freedom is anarchy. And I don't think that's democracy. I don't think that's capitalism. The logical extension of equality, I don't know, I can call it communism. I can call it something, but it's not democracy. Democracy is an argument that puts a balance of these things. How much freedom do we need? How much equality do we need? Anybody that goes to the ends of that continuum, they don't understand democracy. It's not about freedom, period. It's not about equality, period. There's an argument that has to be made. The second tension is between unity and diversity. For some reason today, people say diversity is good, period. Or unity is good, period. You want to think about what the logical extension of those things are? Would you like that? I can see the logical extension of unity in the goose-stepping Nazi army. I can see the diversity and its logical extension to another and even more dreadful kind of anarchy. How much diversity, how much unity, and by the way, that's our motto, E pluribus unum, from many one. How many Americans do you know, have you asked, even know the meaning of that? E pluribus unum. Where there's no unity of some kind, you don't have a country. And when there's just diversity, you don't have a country. It's not logical. The third set of tensions are, again, they're both wonderful in themselves. One is private wealth and the other is commonwealth. I call commonwealth infrastructure. And I define infrastructure as both material and moral. An infrastructure is how we behave with each other in social settings. The fact that I stop at a red light is part of moral infrastructure. Why? So the person seeing the green light can go through without being afraid that I might run into him. Commonwealth is basically infrastructure, and it is a very important part of the development of this country. In fact, Virginia was called a Commonwealth. Massachusetts was called a Commonwealth. Pennsylvania was called a Commonwealth. We own these things together. When somebody destroys or disrupts something in the public, they're affecting my home. My home extends through the community. And if it doesn't, how do you think about that? You think you can live behind some gated community and think that what happens, in the middle of a city isn't part of your home? I mean, why would you think that? That's a bizarre notion for a democracy. Now, maybe you're not interested in that. Private wealth is the wealth that we have that creates the public wealth or the commonwealth. And the commonwealth is the wealth that we have together that creates the private wealth. Now that sounds like mumbo jumbo, doesn't it? But it's a fact. And most of the people who create wealth and give it away, even those people, understand that. They write papers on the gospel of wealth. And it's an important thing to consider, this tight communication. So it begs a number of questions. Should the schools be in the commonwealth or in the private wealth? Should health care be in the private wealth or in the commonwealth? What about roads? It's a debate, you see. It's not a finished debate. Somebody brings up the notion health care should be in the commonwealth. You don't take that person as an idiot. What you do is you say, what's your evidence? Can you support a premise like that? And let me support a different side. The thing about the truth, and when you talk about objective truth, even in the sciences, the best we can hope for is agreed upon subjectivity. It's the best we can hope for. Truth is always contested because it was once true that the world was flat. It was once true that human beings could not fly. How does the truth change? It changes by being contested, but not contested by idiots. Contested by people who are good people, who are people who can bring knowledge and logic and spirit and grace to the arguments. We can lump that all together and say the argument must be civil. Why civil? Well, the etymology of the word is interesting. Civil, civic, citizen, city, civilization, all has the same basic meaning. And if you can't be civil, you're not going to have these other things. And the last tension is the tension between law and ethics. All the laws we make are not good laws. In fact, you could make an argument that most of them are not good laws. How do they get changed? Well, we are supposed to change them in a democracy through protests, debate, change the leadership, do those kinds of things. Yep. But sometimes it gets to be violent, doesn't it? But what is going on here? Why are laws changed? And, they're changed by the legislature, by Congress, by the Supreme Court. They're even changed by social agreements. This is the way we're going to do this. But once you say that this is the law and it must be obeyed without question, sounds very totalitarian to me. And if you say on the other end, God told me to do this, wow, that's just as troubling. Somewhere in the middle, democracy and capitalism live, and this needs to be debated. And the last thing is this notion of going back to Adam Smith again and his idea of self-interest. You are not going to have any kind of organization unless you understand self-interest. And he put it this way: self-interest must be properly understood. I put it this way: if I come to a table and people tell me at that table, I'm not interested in my self-interest, I get up and run away as quickly as I can. Because if you're not interested in your own self-interest, I don't know what else you'd be interested in. But understand that it must be properly understood. And properly understanding it means that my self-interest is a function of the self-interest of all of us. I can't do it alone. In fact, my self-interest is non-existent without yours, without paying attention to yours. That's what a market is. That's what a market is. And if it isn't, it becomes slow or sluggish, it becomes expensive, and it becomes corrupt. So, those are the arguments. And before I end, I just want to say that those tensions exist, not only at the national level, but they exist within your family, they exist within your firm, they exist within the community, they exist within Rotary, because you are always debating these things: freedom, equality, unity, diversity, commonwealth, private wealth, law, and ethics. That's what a democratic citizen argues about. That's what the citizen sees in the debates that are going on. Where are they pushing us? Are they maintaining, enhancing democracy in the market? Or are they pushing us to these extremes which will destroy us? So, that's enough. Thank you.